brought to you by BoardGameAtlas.com, the fastest growing board game community in the world. Kia ora koutou, and welcome to our review of the expansion for Architects of the West Kingdom, Age of Artisans. I'm joined by the designer of that game, Sam MacDonald.
Hey everyone.
So Sam's going to be with us at the end of the video to go through a couple of questions that we've got on the game, and he'll also be joining us for a podcast involving his games and other games later on, and there'll be a link to that in the description below. So here's the video. Age of Artisans is the first expansion for Architects of the West Kingdom, and let's run through what's in the expansion, the good bits, the okay bits, the not so good bits. So the first thing the game adds are the pieces for a 6th player. I'm not sure you'd want to play Architects with 6 players, but you can if you want. And at the very least, it's 2 extra characters with their variable player stats and a new choice of player colour. Probably the most significant addition to the game are the adornments and tool cards. These are multi-use cards, with the yellow bar at the top representing an adornment, which is an improvement to a building, and the red bar at the bottom representing a tool, which is an improvement to an apprentice. The way you get these is at the Guild Hall, and the expansion comes with an updated Guild Hall overlay. You'll build buildings and improve the cathedral as normal by placing a worker in the Guild Hall permanently. But to gain tools or adornments, you have to place a second worker into the Guild Hall, but that worker is placed on top of an existing one. Tools cost you nothing but the worker placed, but adornments cost you 2 tax and 3 coins. Let's go through how tools work first. Here we have the Pickpocket Apprentice, who when you activate the tax stand, you not only get the money from the tax stand, you also get a gold. If you added this tool to the Pickpocket, you would not only get the gold and the money, you'd also get 1 stone each time you activate the tax stand. Now, of course, the obvious combo of this is to add it to the Stonecutter, so you'd get 2 extra stone each time you use the quarry. These tools only activate when the apprentice actually activates. Adornments, on the other hand, go on buildings you have built, and what they do is they give you 2 things. First of all, they give you the bonus on the left immediately when the adornment is built, and at the end of the game they give you bonus victory points based on the number in the gold flag. The next most significant change is the inclusion of artisans, and artisans are like super workers. Each player only gets 1, and they have 3 default powers. First, they count as 2 workers on the turn they are placed. Next, they reduce the cost of using an area by 2 money. And finally, they negate the loss of 1 valor on a location where they are used. And while these are quite handy effects, I didn't find any of them particularly game-breaking or that powerful. But speaking of the black market, there's also a new overlay here. This is the one location where you can pick up a tool without permanently locking down a worker. There's also a dozen new buildings, many of which focus on the tools and adornments for extra points, as well as 12 new apprentices. There are now 2 traders that allow you to trade for gold at the King's Storehouse, as well as the Abbot who gives you extra money when you trade. There's a new Pickpocket who gives you extra money at the tax stand, and the Antagonist who makes your placements at the town centre more powerful. Then there are the Strongmen, and each of these provides a buff to your artisan character. Finally, there is the Lookout who improves your ability at the guardhouse, and probably my favourite characters in the expansion, the Enforcers, who give you bonuses whenever you take capture actions. The last component addition are new sideboards for your player board that have a wagon where you can store excess goods and show you the scoring for tools and adornments. But strangely, my favourite change to the game is one you can do without buying the expansion. Architects has always had a little bit of a first player advantage, and one small change to the rules is that the last player gets to pick an apprentice from those set up at the start of the game. And then in reverse player order, each player picks up an apprentice. Not only does this address the first player advantage that existed in the game before, it actually gives you a start to your engine and someone you can put a tool on from the start of the game. Although that's a small change to the game, I think it's a really, really good one. And for the solo mode, the main change is that whenever you draw a guild hall, the AI player will take the most expensive adornment they can, and they'll get the victory points for that at the end of the game. Overall, I think the Age of Artisans expansion is pretty good, with the adornments and tools being the standout part of the expansion for me. I think they'll add an extra decision point in the game, and open up some fresh approaches for people. Overall though, I don't think this expansion will fix Architects if you didn't like the game to start with. It's very much the same game still, just with more options and more variety. If you fundamentally did not enjoy Architects of the West Kingdom, this is not going to fix that for you. What an entertaining video. Now I'm going to talk to Sam about some of the things I thought in the expansion were really good, some I thought were not so good, and some I thought needed a bit more discussion. So, Sam, one of my favorite things in the expansion was the adornments and the tools. Can you give us a bit of backstory on the sort of design ethos or how you came to put them together?
Yeah, so these are the craft cards, and you can either turn them into adornments or tools. We kind of had this idea with Paladins, and I guess Shem had it in Raiders as well, that we really like multi-use cards.
Yeah.
So there's two different ways of kind of getting rid of the cards, so there's another layer of interaction there. What we thought from the base game was that money wasn't as important as it should be.
So by money you mean the coins?
Yeah, because there's the whole capture mechanism.
Yeah.
But what you would find is people would round up a whole bunch of workers, put them in prison, end up with this big pile of coins, and then they're like, now what? You know, if they didn't have a black market or a merchant engine, they didn't have anything to spend the money on.
And because the adornments cost 5 to spend, it's another sink for that.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's another way of getting points. It also encourages people to build buildings, right? So they have to build in order to upgrade their apprentices or their buildings. But the thing that I like the most is the tools, because it allows the tool cards here. It allows you to customize apprentices like crazy, and there's all these combinations that we probably haven't even thought of yet. We've made sure that it's not overpowered because you can only make use of them once per turn. So
when they trigger low. Yeah. So in the video, the example I used was a plus or on a character that already gets plus or. So as soon as you're placing down, stone, as soon as you're placing that person down, you're like, boom, 3.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's heaps of fun, and people can make these new kind of engines that weren't really viable in the base game. Like they could have a whole capturing engine with enforcers and with conspirators and those sorts of people, and they can attach all these tools to them and be earning lots of resources in ways that they wouldn't have been able to do in the base game. Yeah,
that was my experience as well. All right, moving on to the second one, which is one of those trying to convince me of something. So here's the artisans, the meeples that have a few extra bonuses. One of them's reducing the amount of honor loss you get. One of them is reducing the cost of how much a location costs to use. And the third and final use is they count as 2 workers on the turn they are placed.
Yes.
But there's only one of them.
Yep.
Tell me a story. Why is this better than I initially thought it was?
Why is this better? Well, I think there's lots of things that you can use them for, but the main thing is that it gives players a power turn from time to time. Yeah. For example, I'll talk about the mines. At the mines, your initial placement, you can only get clay, and you have to wait for a second worker to get gold, which is good, and I think it's balanced, but sometimes you just really need that gold. And there might not be gold in the black market, and you can't be bothered getting clay. What are you going to use that for? So you put your artisan in there, in the mines, you get that gold that you need immediately. The other thing that it does is it encourages people who maybe are a little bit shy, maybe a little bit good, to go to the black market. Because I find the black market very fun, and this allows them to go there without the virtue loss. Although it will end up in prison, but that's a quicker way of getting the guy back, the artisan back, because he is going to end up in prison, and then you'll be able to get him or her back. I'm not sure if an artisan is a man or a woman. Anyway, you'll be able to get the artisan back. And you want to use it as much as possible, really.
Yeah, because it's one thing I noticed in games I've played that people avoid losing virtue quite frequently, even though probably some of the stronger strategies involve dumping that virtue down, loading up on debts, and then trying to redeem yourself at the end game. Yeah,
and the one other thing about the artisan, which I think is kind of cool, is we have these 3 new apprentice cards, which are called the Strongmen, and what they do is they will buff the artisan in particular. So one allows the artisan, when he's placed, to avoid paying 2 coins. And so if you're right at the bottom of the virtue track, you're avoiding 2 tax and 2 coins.
But you're already getting a 2-point reduction with it. So it's 4 coins off.
Yeah, exactly. So you can have some other really cool engines around placing the artisan, capturing him back, and then placing him again. And that's a valid strategy as well.
Cool. And the final one I wanted to cover was you've changed the opening sequence of the game. So now the last player gets to pick one character from the apprentice row, and then that counts back. And I want to ask you, did you kick yourself when you originally put the game out and didn't have that rule in?
Yeah, if I'm honest, yeah.
Because as soon as I saw it, I was like, why wasn't this in the original game? Yeah, so that's one thing. If you aren't playing with the expansion, just change that rule anyway. Just straight away, last player gets to pick an apprentice, and then it goes back round to the first player who gets the last pick of apprentices. for me, it sort of kicks off, it starts your engine.
Yeah, that's right. And I think why we thought of it for this expansion, actually, we had done it in Paladins, and we thought, why don't we do that? But also with the addition of the tools, and there's a black market spot which allows you to buy a tool without having built in the guild hall. So with the addition of the tools, then you want players to have an apprentice already that they could put a tool on from turn one.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. All right. So if you want to hear a bit more from Sam about his games and a whole bunch of other things, check out the podcast, and I'll link to that in the description below. And if you enjoyed this video, like it, subscribe to the channel, and support us on Patreon.